So I've noticed that there's been a lot of people saying that they think the MCU has gotten worse since Endgame, or they haven't felt attached to it since then, and so I started thinking, has the MCU actually gotten worse? My first reaction was, yeah. I mean, we just saw this big purple man, two-piece Hulk, choke out a god to death and wipe out half the universe while making quips and saying,
I hope they remember you.
That's kinda hard to top, but then I started thinking and realized these people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Now, I do feel like the MCU's issues, which I will get into, have gotten more pronounced, but I don't think it's some dramatic shift that would change people's feelings on it. But let's go back to the initial point. For the people that say the MCU's gotten worse, what's gotten worse? What is the reason? So I feel like the people who think the MCU has gotten worse fall into one of two camps. The first is that these people feel burned out or overwhelmed by the amount of things coming out. I think that's fair because regular people don't revolve their lives around a singular thing, and sometimes you want to branch out. Cool, I don't have any problems with that, and I see that as a valid reason, especially if they were trying to jump in now with 20 plus things that you have to catch up on. The second, much less valid group is the one that says that Phase 4 has been a mess and feels unconnected and unimportant. Now, I have a lot of problems with Phase 4 specifically, and we're gonna get into them, but to act as if the last three phases did not share this very same issue shows that these people either got into the MCU with Black Panther or Civil War and just assumed everything was always important references to this, or this plot point leads into this, when it was really never like that. There's also a third group of whiners and bandwagoners, but those aren't people anyone should ever listen to, so we can move right past those. Now, I'm not one to seriously criticize what people like and don't like because I don't care. It's important that people like and dislike different things because everyone liking the same things just makes everything boring and uninspired, which is to some degree a good criticism of the MCU as a whole. And before we get into my criticisms and things that I don't necessarily believe but still think are valid, let's get back into that second group really quick because I think it's much more interesting. And I'm not saying that Phase 4 isn't actually messy right now, especially with the shows, or that it could be getting worse, but since we don't know where it's going, there's no point in speculating. What I am saying is that when talking about Phase 4, saying that it seems unconnected and unimportant is stupid and means that you don't realize it's kinda been like that. So far in Phase 4, we've gotten 5 movies and 6 shows. That's an awful lot in only a year and a half, with like 4 to 5 more projects on the way this year. Now, as I'm writing this, I haven't seen Doctor Strange's mom yet, but based on what I do know about it, I guarantee that it doesn't have the issue that a lot of people have talked about during this phase. From its very premise, it's going to have lasting effects on the MCU. Probably. So it not being important doesn't make sense. Neither is the movie that came before with No Way Home, but actually to prove my point, let's start at the very beginning and move from there. Iron Man 1, important as it introduces one of the 3 main characters, nothing else. The Incredible Hulk, doesn't matter until over 10 years later, and even then, not really. Iron Man 2, definition of a skippable movie. Thor, important as it introduces one of the 3 main characters. Nothing else matters. Captain America, the First Avenger. Pretty sure you get it by now. The Avengers brings together the team and establishes dynamics while also introducing important characters for later. So with that, Phase 1 has an important score of 80% or 4 out of 6. Really should be 50 because I don't really think Thor adds anything to his character, but whatever. Now on to Phase 2. Iron Man 3 establishes Tony's PTSD, and if him destroying his suits mattered, it would be a full score, but I'm taking points off. Thor: The Dark World throws another Infinity Stone at us, but when we get to Infinity War, you'll see why that doesn't matter. Captain America: The Winter Soldier starts Steve's distrust in government and dissolves S.H.I.E.L.D., which doesn't matter. Guardians of the Galaxy, probably the most creative movie that does not matter. Age of Ultron, unskippable, adds way too much info, even if the movie itself is kinda meh. Ant-Man, fun, but who cares? And with this, Phase 2 gets an important score of 41.7%, or 2.5 out of 6. Finally, on to Phase 3. Captain America: Civil War has Black Panther at his best and breaks the team up. Doctor Strange introduces earthly magic and the dark dimension. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, only important if you think Nebula is. She's not. Also did nothing with Adam Warlock. Spider-Man: Homecoming, sure, I guess we can say this one matters. Thor: Ragnarok changes up Thor's personality, and closest thing we got to Planet Hulk. Black Panther, overrated and unimportant. Infinity War, the best Marvel movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp, you'd think I'd say it's important because of the end credit scene, But no, it's not. Captain Marvel introduces her character, who is kind of important, and the revamped Skrull origins. Endgame, the culmination of 10 plus years. If you didn't watch it, I don't see how you lasted this long. And Far From Home. I like this movie. It does not matter. Which means that Phase 3 gets an important score of 63%, or 7 out of 11, which gives the first 3 phases a total score of 58%, or 13.5 out of 23. And I was still being very generous, because I don't think that movies like Captain Marvel or Doctor Strange are really that important in the grand scheme of things. Now, of course, you might think that Guardians does actually matter, because how would you know who they are by Infinity War? And sure, it's nice to understand the characters beforehand, but it's not essential, and that's my point. Because of how some of the movies and shows interact, sometimes wildly, it is hard to tell what you need to and don't need to know. But based off of my own scoring, a lot of it is just inconsequential to the grand scheme of things. And I'm not even speaking as someone who has extensive comic knowledge either. I know a lot about the characters that I care about, but for example, I don't know much about Ant-Man except the old one beat his wife and made Ultron, or that Hawkeye is boring. And neither of those facts helped me understand the MCU versions. Again, if you're burned out or the MCU is putting out shows and movies about characters that you don't like, then just don't watch it. You don't have to keep up with something just because it's popular.
Message!
Before Infinity War, I hadn't seen Captain Marvel or Ant-Man and the Wasp because I didn't care. Did that affect how I enjoyed any of the movies that came after those? No! When I went back and watched them, did I get some deeper understanding about the characters? No! And the only reason why I'm not going through everything in Phase 4 so far is because we don't know how important the movies and shows are going to be since it's not over yet. So, going back to the original question of if the MCU has gotten worse, my answer is no, and my math, which could be very well different than yours, backs that up. When it comes to my criticism, specifically of Phase 4 so far, it's been that all except No Way Home and potentially Doctor Strange's mom have been underwhelming. But even with that, I think I'm kinda missing the point. For the shows, which I think is where a lot of this is coming from, they're all just setups. That's all they were meant to be. Now again, we do not know the implications of everything, so it's kinda like, yeah, right now in the moment, not really feeling it, but 2 years down the road, it might actually be important. Same goes with the movies. Black Widow set up her sister, and Eternals set some of them and the Black Knight up. Then Shang-Chi, the movie that I just keep forgetting about, could be important if the 10 Rings goes anywhere, but we'll have to wait and see. No Way Home did set Peter back to square one, but we still don't even know what that's gonna look like. And again, for Doctor Strange's mom, who knows? Specifically about the shows though, excluding Loki and What If, since it's a new concept to the MCU, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does not count. I do think that having them as limited series and only 6 episodes does hurt them. It definitely feels like extra fluff just so they don't have to give these characters full movie roles yet. The shows and movies did what they set out to do though. They've all either introduced new characters that will no doubt be important later, made Spider-Man a sad little man, or new concepts that the MCU is going to use. The formula really hasn't changed. What I do think has changed is the expectations and the discourse around them. Now, I don't really talk about this in any other video because it wouldn't make sense. With Twitter, follow me by the way, and the advent of people talking about shit that they have no business talking about has gotten extremely worse over the last few years. There's this weird thing where if expectations of a movie are not exactly what they want, the movie's bad and the whole MCU is getting worse because of it. That's really fucking dumb. When your expectations are met or exceeded, then it makes sense that you would like that movie more. That's probably why Infinity War is my favorite, because going into it, I only wanted 3 things. Thanos to choke somebody out, Black Panther to get some type of consequence for letting people in or because he told the whole world about the real Wakanda, and I wanted Thanos to win. So, when I watched the movie and got everything that I wanted, I was extremely happy, but that doesn't mean if none of those things happened, I would have been mad. Sure, I'm upset that Adam Warlock was teased and then nothing came from that, but after Endgame, I wasn't online screaming about why he was the biggest missed opportunity or whatever. The story they were trying to tell wouldn't have been made better with him in it, and he would have been reduced to a cameo anyway. Online, I hate talking about things that I actually enjoy because there's bound to be some weirdo who either takes things way too seriously or just doesn't know what they're talking about, either because they're just parroting ideas that they saw online or are just dumb. I wasn't online during the very beginning of the MCU and have really only noticed this shift in the last 4 or so years, so it may have been just as bad. But with fandoms and stan culture just being everywhere right now, all that toxicity that comes with those seems like it's bringing everything else down with it. The hype machine has a tendency to always go off the rails, and because of that, in a lot of people's minds, things aren't going to be good just because it wasn't this cameo-filled movie that is going to change the MCU forever. Some movies are just standalone, and I'm not saying you shouldn't criticize a movie or show, especially if you feel like it doesn't do a character justice, like with Moon Knight or even some of the changes to Kamala Khan. That is something that is personal to you, and if you don't really like the direction that it's going in, that's fine. But you can't be mad at a movie or show just because it didn't fit your expectations, especially when there was really no indication that it was going to go that way to begin with. After the Infinity Saga, we're in the rebuilding phase right now. Again, I don't know what Doctor Strange's mom is like, but after No Way Home and knowing that it's somewhat similar in scope because of the whole multiverse thing, I think it's going to shift a lot of dynamics and will most likely have long-reaching effects. Probably. Should they have made a Black Widow movie before she died so it made sense and didn't just set up her sister? Sure. But I would also argue that Captain Marvel should have had a movie before 2 Ant-Man movies. Should every one of the shows had more than 6 episodes so the endings didn't feel hollow and rushed? Yeah. But I would also rather a shorter series that doesn't overstay its welcome, like some other Marvel properties. Should Eternals just have been better all around? Yeah, I really can't argue against that one. But what I'm saying is, if you look past the initial feeling of, oh, this isn't what I wanted, or oh, this failed my expectations, I think you'll realize it's always been this bad. Wait, no, that's not what I meant.
You got caught! You got busted!
Hey guys, if you've been on the channel for any measure of time, you know that I usually don't make videos like this. But I had an idea that I thought was going to be fun and wouldn't require me to make a whole bunch of assets so that I could put something out in between untimely reviews very quickly. Look how that turned out. If you have any idea on what you'd like to see me rant about next, let me know in the comment section below. Mayhaps like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.